Welcome to the Vocation of the Business Leader podcast. I'm Greg Balster. Here we explore how Catholic leaders let Christ and the teachings of the church he founded guide their work, integrating faith and business. Each episode offers inspiring stories to help you live an undivided life. Let's meet our guest, John Johnson, CEO of Patmos Hosting. Welcome, John.
Hey, Greg. Good to be with you.
Thanks. Will you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm John, adopted son of God in the John 1:12 sense, married husband to Alexandria, and I have my seventh kid on the way. So we'll have 7, 10 and under, which is a ton of fun. And I founded Patmos Hosting. I also founded the Albertus Magnus Institute. I have a great love for education, and especially of the liberal arts sort, and great books. And then have a funny way of earning a living, given that love in tech. So that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. Will you tell us a little bit about your upbringing and your early faith journey?
Well, yeah, I was a catechetical orphan and went to Catholic school, K through 8, but never really had the faith in the family. It was kind of what we did to get the good education, and it was good because I at least learned grammar at grammar school, which is kind of a novelty. It has been in the last 40 years or so. So really had a faith life, raised as a nominal Catholic, and then discovered the faith in a more deep way as an undergraduate in college studying philosophy. So I had this weird idea that, yeah, sure, I'm Catholic, but then there's the real world. And those were two different things, right? There's like Catholic world and then real world. And then it was only much later in life, like not in childhood, but my early 20s through studying reality called philosophy, that it became really quickly apparent to me that this is actually the source of reality. This is reality, right? There's no disintegration between these two things. And so sort of developed a more holistic view, I think you could say, which has been a great source of profit and joy spiritually for me. And so, yeah, I think integration is kind of my motto. Like, what's the whole all about, and how do we fit into it?
So after you left St. Mary's College in California, what were you doing with the philosophy degree?
Whatever I wanted to. It was an interesting thing when you have that sort of education. You have a lot opened up to you because you can kind of have any conversation or learn any skill. And I wanted to actually, I was doing youth ministry for like 10 years, and I loved it. I loved it. And as a sales focused CEO now, it really prepped me well for that. If you can sell Jesus to teenagers, you can sell just about anything. So I did that as a young man, and I was discerning a priestly vocation for quite some time, and obviously didn't become a priest, but went out and got a wife and convinced her to marry me. And then when you got to make a living, you can't really be a youth minister, unfortunately. So I was always involved in tech in some way or another, and then founded a business that sort of was parlayed into Patmos Hosting. Been in this industry for about 10 or 15 years, and then Patmos was born about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, so I did see that you discerned the vocation with the monks of Norcia.
I did. Right? Yeah, I was in Norcia. It's a great place to be. It's the home of Saints Benedict and Scholastica, their birthplace. So in many ways, Norcia is sort of the birthing, the womb of Western monasticism, where it all came to be through Saint Benedict and then Saint Gregory the Great, really formalizing things. But it was a magical place for me. It was founded, sort of revitalized. There were no monks for like 100 years in Norcia, believe it or not, after the Napoleonic era, and then I think it was Pope Benedict invited these couple of ragtag Benedictine monks from the United States, believe it or not, to sort of refound the monastery. And it's just been really growing and thriving ever since then. A lot of Americans, but a lot of international brothers as well. And so I went out there, it must have been 15 years ago now, and I thought I was going to be a monk because it was the highest and best thing in the world for me, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm John Johnson. You've been waiting for me. Here I am. Yeah. And of course, after about a month, I remember this. Actually, I was on a discernment walk with the superior, or at the time he was the vocations director. Now he's the abbot. But he laughed at me very charitably, and he said, "John, who are you kidding? You're not going to be a monk." And he was right. And I instantly had this sense of relief and freedom. And I learned a very valuable lesson that stuck with me to this day. And that's, you think of vocation as like, or at least I tended to think of vocation as doing what's just the best and the highest and the most heroic thing. But you really have to measure it by how you will love the best. And so I sort of discovered my vocation by figuring out the hard way how I was meant to love the best. And that was as a husband. And I kind of thinking about it in my head later, it's like, if you're struggling as a young man to figure out, should I be a priest? Should I be married? Whatever. If a angel appeared to you in your bedroom and said, "John, this is God's plan for you. Do this," what would make you the most happy and joyful to hear him say? And you kind of already know that answer. I think any young man struggling to discern his vocation already has the answer. What's lacking is the yes. And when you start with the yes, the how becomes so much more clear. And I kind of had the how. I was just not really embracing it until I gave the yes. And that was it. And for me, that was marriage. So I got married really, really well. I have to say, I did really well for myself, as anybody who knows Mrs. Johnson will attest. And 10 years in a marriage, on our 11th year now, and 7th kid on the way. It's just been, it goes by so fast, as you know, so fast. You know, you struggle to remember what your kids were like 5 years ago, what they were like as toddlers. And so a whirlwind, totally blink of an eye, but most beautiful, awesome thing in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. So you founded the Albertus Magnus Institute. What brought about the founding of that?
There are very few places left in the world to get a good higher education. And I was so blessed with this sort of thing. And I wasn't a particularly great student, could never cut it in higher academia. I got a master's, but couldn't do a PhD to save my life, I'd imagine. But it was just so profitable for me, and so enriching, and so beautiful, so fun, so good, and so almost otherworldly, that I thought more people should have access to it. And so AMI was founded to unite the few remaining colleges still doing a great job and great books, liberal arts and classics, and then to make a online alternative to the brick and mortar that utilizes the same faculty from those institutions and makes an online way to study for free in the way that's live, interactive, synchronous. So it's not a substitute for brick and mortar, but if you're a young professional or an adult who's getting into homeschooling, or somebody who went to one of these great schools but just wants to keep going with the college of peers, it's a great way to do it with online night classes, and it's free, live, interactive. It's as free as it is freeing. And so, we're up to 1,000 students right now, and I think more than 1,000 actually at last count. But it's really taken off in a surprising way, and people seem to like it. So I'm really, really blessed to be a part of it, a small part, and we're growing kind of faster than we can handle right now. So we're trying to hire somebody. I'm a volunteer executive director for the Institute, but we're trying to hire somebody who can do it full time, because that's really what it demands right now.
So you said that you've been in the technology industry for quite a while before Patmos. So what were you doing there? And then what was the catalyst that moved you to start Patmos?
I was running a consultancy, and so I was kind of a one-man band who was finding needs with technology, all kinds of companies, and building websites, like hiring contractors to build websites. So I was glorified middleman, as all consultants are, and developed a pretty good lifestyle business out of it, and did some really good work. And then in the early 2020s, when the great cancellation purge started to happen, we were getting notice from one of our clients in particular, and we got a letter that says, "You guys have so many days to get off our servers," because I was basically buying wholesale big tech, provisions for hosting, and then reselling those, packaging them and reselling them, and doing monthly maintenance plans. That's how you make your money as a consultant, right? And then one of those big tech companies that we were working with said, "This is a naughty group, and you're going to get off our servers because we don't like what they have to say." And so, if you knew this group, some of you probably do, they weren't they weren't as radical as they were being painted, and kind of. But I thought to myself, well, if it's happening to these guys, it's probably happening to a lot of people. So I'm going to buy my own hosting company and build my own data centers. And how hard could it be? And it was a lot harder than I thought. But you're in tech, you understand. But we got it off the ground, and it turned out there was a pretty big market for this. So we've grown from 0 to, I think, 65 employees in the last 3 years, and just got into our 4th data center. And so our value prop is we're not going to cancel you for ideological reasons. And we're actually going to provide a better value, a better cost, better service, because we're verticalized. So because we own the data center, don't have a landlord, that creates one less layer for you to pay for. But it also creates this promise of uncancelability. So we don't host porn. We don't do anything illegal. And really, the porn position is not so much because of ideological reasons. Of course, pornography is abhorrent, but we just don't want to be the arbiter of what's legal and illegal content. So it makes sense to just cut that line of potential business completely off, in spite of its tremendous potential profitability, right? So that's how Patmos came to be. And, it's the name you probably recognize as the place where the first victim of corporate cancellation was sent. When they couldn't kill him, they exiled him, and Patmos became a place where his message was amplified and protected. And so Patmos tries to live that and let the truth fight itself out online, which is really the forum of discourse and speech today. But if technocracy is going to be in the business of what you can say online, then really they're in the business of what you can think. And that's a really dangerous place for humanity to be. So Patmos's whole mission is to carve out space on the internet and to provide a certain sort of technology that is authentic technology. It's actually at the service of the human person, which is what tech should be. It's a tool. It's a tool, right? Whereas the modern technocratic paradigm envisions you, the person, are actually the product meant to conform to the specs of the technology that they create. You know that, right? Your Google account's free because you're the product. So Patmos has a little different understanding on that and hopes to try to be a voice for this undoing of what Pope Francis calls the technocratic paradigm, which is in Laudato Si. It's a really, really good little section there in Laudato Si about the ironclad logic of the technocratic paradigm. And I think it's really worth reading. Every Catholic should read that, and you'll get a kind of idea for what Patmos was founded to counter.
So I looked on Glassdoor, and the reviews for Patmos are all 5 stars.
Are they really? I haven't seen it. That's great.
They said it's such a wonderful place to work, and it's like a family.
Okay. So I guess I owe some people like $20 for writing that or something.
Right. Yeah. So why do you think so many companies have cultural problems?
Have you ever seen this show on Apple? It's called Severance. You should watch it. It's really good. It's probably the best TV since Breaking Bad. And the whole concept of it is this big corporation basically frees the person by giving them a microchip in their brain so that they can totally bifurcate their corporate life from their personal life. So they go to their corporate job and they don't remember anything from their personal life. And then they go home, they go down the elevator and the chip kicks in, and their personal life, they don't remember anything about their workday. So the work versions of themselves sort of just wake up every day instantly, constantly in work. And that's all they know. That's all they remember. The personal versions of themselves on the outside do the same on the outside, and they have no recollection of what they're doing at work. So they bifurcate the human person to sort of create this work-life balance, which is such a common term in the corporate jargosphere today, right? And I can't take any credit for this idea. It comes from an old business partner and friend of mine named Lance Johnson, no relation. But he co-founded Patmos with us, and we're no longer working together. He went a different direction, but just a brilliant guy. And in the very early days of Patmos, I remember he sets us down at this company retreat, and I'm not going to do it justice. So sorry, Lance. But he sits us down at this corporate retreat and explains to us how, work-life balance is kind of the wrong way to think about it. When I'm at work, I bring my whole self. I don't just bring half myself. When I go home, I bring my whole self home. When I'm on this podcast, I bring my whole self here. That's the way humans should do things. And obviously those places in which we interact and give ourselves, they have different orders of precedence and priority and importance. My faith life takes precedence over everything, or at least it should. My family life takes precedence over everything except for that. My life as a husband takes precedence over my life as a father. I sort of have to love my wife more than I love my kids, which is kind of foreign, right? And my work life is subordinate to all those goods. And so I bring my whole self to my job. I don't have a work-life balance. It's not to say I'm workaholic or I never stop working, quite the contrary. But when your goods are ordered, you can bring your whole self into them in a way that complements the integrity of the whole. And so I think if more people thought about it like that, I was a little bit surprised to hear you say, Patmos employees say it's like a family. I say all the time, it's not a family. I can't fire my wife. I can fire you, right? And I can't quit my wife, but I could quit this job. And that's a way of saying that, hey, there are more important things than work. But also the sort of person who really thrives at Patmos is somebody who can put their whole selves into it insofar as their whole selves are called to have a job, right? So yeah, culture is super important at Patmos. We're a really odd culture. We're not a very sterile corporate culture. We really encourage diversity in the sense of ideological diversity. So we have employees who believe all sorts of things. Catholics, non-Catholics. My right-hand man calls himself an evangelical atheist. He's a great guy. Great guy, and just so good at what he does. But we can all unite in this mission to promote and create a freer internet. So yeah, Patmos is an awesome place to work, and we attract a certain kind of human who does really, really well there. Anyway, if you got any listeners who want to come work for Patmos, check it out. It's a great place to get into tech, especially if you want to start as an intern and work your way up. The culture's impossible to train, and skills are pretty easy to train. So especially at entry levels, we just hire culture, and it's shocking how fast people work their way up.
So what's a typical customer for Patmos?
That's a good question. We've got a couple thousand customers, and obviously our identity focus is the free speech, cancel-proof hosting. So for that reason, we've attracted some pretty firebrand types, who wouldn't be online without us. But we also serve everyday businesses. I mean, we serve one of the largest United States municipalities. Their whole infrastructure is on Patmos. And so, the mission front, and this identity focus of free speech is it's not really, we don't wear it on our sleeve. We kind of take the Chick-fil-A approach. Like, everybody knows where Chick-fil-A stands on certain ideological issues, but you don't go there for those reasons. You go there because they make a good chicken sandwich. So Patmos tries to just provide a great tech experience on the hosting front. We do a lot of GPU work, especially with this huge AI demand that we're facing. We found that our data centers and our ability to do things pretty creatively and with a good amount of agility provide a tremendous amount of value to our clients who need lots of power fast. So yeah, hosting, cloud, off cloud, on cloud, doesn't matter. Bare metal, dedicated servers, backup, disaster recovery, and then GPU, like multi-megawatt GPU co-location. We do that really well. We also have a Denver office that does pro services. So we can build your website, everything from the marketing and branding, strategy, design, to development and implementation. And then obviously tremendous value again, because we can host it. So it's sort of a one-stop IT shop for any tech need. And I hate saying that because usually when you're good at everything, you're not good at one thing. But in tech, you can save a lot and actually get a ton of value by having all these services under one roof that our clients really have come to love, because they just have one team, one point of contact. They can call somebody's cell phone, whether their website's down or whether they need a redesigned logo. We're kind of here for them, and people come to really appreciate that. So we've got a couple thousand clients now on the, on the hosting front, pro services, or GPU. And that, it's hard to say who the typical customer is because we serve such a wide swath of them.
Mm-hmm. And so you recently bought was it the Star Telegram building in Kansas City that you're going to turn into a data center?
We've acquired the rights to the Star building. That's right, and we are converting it into a 100 megawatt data center. So it's what's that?
That's a huge building.
It is a 400,000 square foot building, which is really hard to fathom. It's like the size of 10 Home Depots, and it's beautiful prime real estate in Kansas City. But I discovered this place. It was kind of sitting there as a giant paperweight because it was built in 2006 to be a newspaper printing facility. And what a great time to build a newspaper printing facility, right? Right before the dawn of the internet. But ironically enough, apparently newspaper printing facilities share about 70% of the core infrastructure required for a high density GPU colocation facility. So I kind of saw this when nobody else did, and was just really blessed to be in the right place at the right time. The city was going to level it and turn it into the Royals ballpark, and then that vote narrowly failed somehow, which is a real surprise to me. Called the seller back, and he said, "Yep, let's make a deal." And got an awesome client in there to be our anchor tenant. But then we're kind of really thinking about, well, how do we make a data center that really serves humans? And when you have 400,000 square feet, that's a lot more space than power need can consume. So the way the building's laid out, we're building the data center in the middle of it, super secure, but also scalable. And then because of where this building is, it's, data centers are typically like these industrial eyesores somewhere, way away from town. Sometimes they're downtown, but you know what I mean? They're kind of giant urban tombstones. Yeah. They're ugly, and like 4 people work at them. So they're not great for the polis. They're not great for the communities that they're in. From a people perspective, they make a ton of money, sure, but there's more to life than that. So we're sort of building this. It's hard to describe, but I like to call it WeWork for grownups, but an AI innovation facility that can serve as a co-working space for the people and companies that actually have their machines and co-location in the building. So it's going to be a bustling tech hub for Kansas City, which is really exciting for us. And the city's really excited about it too.
Yeah. Sounds like a great facility. So what would you say is the vocation of the business leader?
Well, I think the vocation of the business leader is fundamentally to serve for the common good, right? Catholic social teaching's got some pretty good principles that are worthy of imitating and worthy of learning for anybody who would consider themselves a Catholic business leader, right? So common goods at the top of that. How are goods rightly ordered according to prudence for their highest ends, right? Secondly is subsidiarity, right? How are decisions best made? Well, they're best made at the lowest possible level. You're always going to know what's best for your family more than somebody, in the government is going to know. And so you can really benefit from running a company like that. What do people hate about corporate life? Well, they hate micromanagement. It's like a trope, right? Nobody likes to be micromanaged. Well, the church actually has an answer for that, is make decisions at the lowest possible level, and people can work freely. Patmos doesn't come out and say, okay, subsidiarity is the way of the law of the land. But we do have the core value called freedom, and that's kind of what we mean by it, right? And then solidarity is another one. There are other faith groups, and I mean this with all admiration, but Jews, for instance, a dollar changes hands within their community 17 times before it leaves. Catholics are terrible at this, right? We're just looking to get the best deal wherever we can find it. And frankly, I don't blame most Catholics for not keeping it in the family, because most of their service offerings are just as bad. We haven't done a great job. We used to have the market cornered on art and beauty and architecture. We just don't make beautiful things anymore, which means we're not running beautiful companies anymore. And so I think first of all is developing products that are worthy of getting purchased or you want to buy, not just because you're keeping it in the family. But then secondly, really, if there is that good option, definitely support your local Catholic business. Buy local, buy Catholic. Great. I mean, that's kind of Mormons do this really well. Jews do it really well. Catholics just really wet the bed in this regard. And I think you're seeing the tide turn a little bit. There's a good amount of change I'm seeing. There's some really decent Catholic thought leaders doing good things in business that I think is really exciting for the coming years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I see that you're on the Catholic Speakers Organization. Do you do many talks for them?
I used to do a lot more, and I just haven't had time, but I do still love talking about St. John when I can. I love talking about the Gospel of John, and then I also love talking at youth events. It's still something that just lights my heart on fire. So I'm down to booking like one of those a quarter, and I just, I don't even charge for it. I just love doing it. They ask me, "What's your speaker's fee?" I'm like, I don't care. Just happy to put me in, coach. I love getting out and doing that when I can. But yeah, and yeah, Catholic. What is that website? I don't know, CatholicSpeakers.com.
Catholic, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. They do a great job too, and as the agent there, finding some good gigs when my schedule allows.
Have you always been so bold in your faith?
No, I think I've always kind of been bold, but to the point of recklessness and just brashness that can be really off-putting for certain people. And I've learned to temper that over the years, and I would say, there was a time when I was really bold about my faith without even knowing what that meant, in an embarrassing way. I was probably bold about my faith before I was going to Sunday mass regularly, right? It was almost pharisaical of me. I don't have to put too much of my heart on the internet here, but yeah, I think I've grown to appreciate and still have a lot of work to do in this respect, but the boldness of the faith is actually strongest when it's silent and less vocalized, or at least when the vocalization is a fruit of what's in the heart. And so I really want the testimony of my faith to always be subordinated to the authentic contemplative heart of my faith, right? And then whatever bleeds out organically, let it be. But usually when you start with the vocalization and work your way back to the contemplation, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Yeah, I want to live it more boldly.
Yeah. What are the best places for listeners to go to find out more about you and all your endeavors?
You don't want to find out more about me, but if you want tech help, patmos.tech. If you want a great books education, magnusinstitute.org. And then, if you really want to find me, I'm down to basically LinkedIn. I don't have much patience for other social medias. But yeah, always love meeting other business leaders, Catholic or not. And I think relationships and friendships are very, very important to cultivate among those who are trying to do good things in the world.
Yeah. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about?
I don't know. Talk about you. You're trying to launch a podcast. Well, sorry, you're doing it. Yeah. I'm happy to be a part of it. Why are you doing this? I know you don't get a lot of chance to talk about yourself when you're interviewing people like this, but tell us why you're founded.
I have a real heart for men's ministry. It was really important to me early in my married life, and reaching out to business people, which are a lot of men that live a divided life, which I have totally guilty of. So I was thinking, so what am I passionate about? I'm passionate about business, and I'm passionate about my faith. So interviewing successful business leaders like yourself that are living their faith personally and professionally as an example to, Joe Catholic in the pew, to encourage them to live out their faith undividedly.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's some motivation.
Yeah. And why podcast?
I like podcast. I've been, because you can listen to them while you're doing stuff and while you're driving, and it's an easy way to get your message out there.
It's true. It's the way things are going. People hear you and they get the chance to digest. It is good. I love the long form thing because sound bites, they're no fun. You always get the wrong ones out, but No, this is great, Greg. You're doing great work. Really happy to be invited. What an honor.
Thank you.
You bet.
All right. So I guess we'll just end it there.
You sure? I got more time if you want to go. Let's go. What else you got?
Well, what else do you have? So tell me about your pizza place.
Oh yeah. This completes the story for the monks of Norcia, because I discerned out there, they said, get lost, kid. You're not going to be a monk. Who are you kidding, John? You're not going to be a monk. But I kept loving the place. Yeah, I did go and get married, but I kept this really fond place in my heart for Norcia. It's where I took my wife on our honeymoon, or one of the places at least. But anyway, a few years ago, there was this building down the street. It's one of these buildings you drive by, you're like, somebody should buy that. It's a 160-year-old building. And for that reason, it can't be much, but it could be a wood-fired pizza joint. So I finally bought it, and me and a buddy started Pizza Norcia, which is an homage to the monks of Norcia. So we serve authentic wood-fired pizza in the Neapolitan fashion, but then it's like this real Umbrian flavor, which is where Norcia is. So you get the Umbria, and Norcia is really famous for truffles and those hanging hams. If you go anywhere in Italy, you see the hanging hams on the corner there. Mm-hmm. Those are called Norcinerias, which is named after the town of Norcia. It's kind of where the Romans go on vacation. If you're ever visiting Italy or Rome, drive up to Norcia. It's like an hour and a half away. But anyway, we called it Pizza Norcia to be this homage to Umbria and the monks of Norcia. And we are we are the only restaurant in the entire Western Hemisphere that sells beer inertia that's brewed by the monks of Norcia themselves, which is the best beer in the world. It's so good, you might shed a tear your first taste. Guaranteed. To maybe shed a tear. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So it's fun. It's a kind of a hobby business, and we make awesome pizza though. So if you're ever in Northern California area, it's in El Dorado, come check out Pizza Norcia. I'll have a beer with you.
That'd be awesome. So how'd you meet your wife?
I met her at Adoration. I was running pretty good place to meet your wife, right?
That's probably the best.
Yeah. Yeah. I was running a young adult group in Sacramento, and we had this monthly adoration event at the Cathedral, the Blessed Sacrament. And she showed up for the first time. And, it's very professional. And I said, oh, nice to meet you. First time here, But she was so beautiful that I knew, okay, I had to put on my sales hat, right? And I instituted the slow play methodology, the push away, as they call it in the sales industry, right? I kept it very professional, waited for like 10 other guys to sort of try, bounce off of her, and then waited for the right time. So really slow played it for about 6 months. But I remember that when I met her, it was like, hi, nice to meet you. Welcome. But then I walked away, and I remember out loud, I said under my breath, marry me. I said it to myself, but I said it out loud. I'll never forget it. And I didn't think I had a shot in the world, but God is good. And that's how we met. So yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful story. Beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Just, amazing. Anyway.
Yeah. I met my wife at a church singles group get together. So
better than a dive
adoration,
bar, right?
Yeah. Not adoration, but still at the church. So,
no, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Marrying well is really important. And I think, I don't know how many younger people listen to this thing, but our generation, I don't even think I would say our generation anymore. That generation, millennials and Z, they really have a problem deciding. Like they'll spend more time scrolling through Netflix to figure out what to watch than just picking something and watching it. I think that's actually been validated, like that we actually do spend more time scrolling than choosing. And that's a problem, because you get into the zone of perpetual discernment, waiting for the perfect thing, making the perfect the enemy of the good. But we just lack the ability to decide. And that's a good thing, because we're so idealistic. We want the best, we want the highest. But this word decide, it's like homicide, pesticide, suicide. It comes from the Latin decidere, but you got to cut everything off. It means you kill everything but one thing. And in that one thing, you find everything. And I think we really struggle to kill off everything, because we don't want to say no. We don't want to miss out, right? FOMO. But when we do decide, we find all the treasure, especially when we make a good decision. And God's not like trying to trick you up in your vocation. Like he's going to lead with love, and really how you love the best is how you're going to live the best. And so that's, I don't know if I have a right to give anybody advice about this, but just dare to decide. That was so helpful for me. I wish I would have figured that out way earlier in life than I did. Just pick one. I say that to people, go pick out a wife, because like, who do you want to marry? Go pick out a husband. I see so many young people wasting a lot, not wasting, learning. It's good, but in God's time, sure. But just get married. It's like, it's so good. So Patmos, we support it.
Mm-hmm.
We give a marriage bonus actually, and a baby bonus. So marriages are really, families really encouraged, and I think promoted insofar as any corporate life could provide for something like that.
Yeah. And you're never going to be ready, quote unquote, ready to get married.
No, man. No,
So
you're never, I'm
that.
still not ready. That's right. You're never going to be ready. And also what you are most worried about on the outside will never even be an issue on the inside. It's like the fears I had about marriage. There's something called grace of state. You've heard of state of grace, but let me tell you about grace of state. And that is God's going to give you the grace to perform certain duties according to your office and state in life, right? It's why confessors don't have an issue remembering your confession, if they recognize your voice or something. If you're in a state of grace and you're living according to the office that God has put you in, he's going to give you special graces that really help you do what you're supposed to do. And I tell you, man, that is so real. That is so real, how grace of state can animate a marriage, especially from the perspective of a husband. I can't really speak for my wife on this, but for me personally, I've really, all the things I was worried about, none of the things I was worried about were an issue once we were married. So don't be afraid. John Paul II said that all the time. Don't be afraid. I think the Bible says it too. A lot. So
365 times.
That's what I've heard. One for each day of the year. Yeah. So take the leap, get married, do something good in the world. This life is so short. Oh, yeah. It's just, poof, we're gone. Like grass in a fire, so say yes now, say yes early, say yes often. And when you say yes, God is going to do his part, and his part can't be outdone. It's fun. A lot of fun. It's a lot of wonder in the world. So we miss it trying to get certainty. Wonder's way better than certainty.
Amen to that. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, John. I really appreciate it.
Keep going, Greg. I want to come back on your podcast in like a year or two when you've got 100,000 downloads. In fact, I know everybody's listening to this right now is listening to it in 2 years, because you'll get your audience, grow up and build, and then they'll start going back to your early days episodes. So hello from the past, everybody listening in the future. But this is great, Greg. Keep it up. Keep up the good work, and keep in touch, because I think the work that you're doing needs to be supported.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right. Okay. Thanks so much for having me on. God bless.
You bet. God bless. Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Vocation Business Leader Podcast. Until next time, may God guide your work and help you witness his love in all you do. God bless.